Good morning, everybody. My name is Quill West, and I am presenting today as part of an organization called CCC OER. And we are here to talk about rebuilding open courses for equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I'm going to pause for a minute and let my co-presenters introduce themselves briefly.
Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I am Shinta Hernandez. I am from Montgomery College in Maryland, so it's right outside of Washington, D.C., and I am a department chair of sociology, anthropology, and criminal justice. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tanja Connerly. I'm a full-time professor at San Jacinto College in Houston, Texas, and I teach sociology. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ursula Pike. I am the Associate Director of the Digital Higher Ed Consortium of Texas, and we work with all 55 community colleges in the state. Welcome.
So as you're coming into the room, and I know we've still got some people coming in, and as I'm talking about what we're going to do today, if you wouldn't mind in the chat window letting us know what brings you to this session. Why did you choose this session over any other session that you could be attending right now? It's a busy conference. There's a lot of great things to see and hear and learn about. So why are you interested in this topic? What brings you here now? And while you're doing that, I'm going to move forward just to explain what's going to happen today. This is a 55-minute session, so you're here for a little bit longer. So we're going to talk a little bit about why we're here, and then we'll have a 25-minute breakout discussion. So please be ready to talk with your colleagues. There's a bit too many of us to have a full conversation in an open room. So we're going to go into breakout rooms and talk. And then we're going to share some ideas from the breakout and talk a little bit about our ongoing equity, diversity, and inclusion work at CCC OER. And some communities that we'd like to talk about asking you to join us in. So that's kind of a brief rundown of our session today. And let's start then for each of us, this work coming to equity, diversity, and inclusion as part of the work with open education is a lot. So we want to talk a little bit, first of all, about why each of us was inspired to do this work, why we want to have these conversations, and then we'll expand from there into talking about why the overall group and why we think open education needs to go this way. So I'm going to start by asking whoever on the panel wants to volunteer to tell us your why.
Okay, great. I'll get started. As a sociologist, I guess that's the reason why. My passion is learning about people, knowing about people, the differences of people. And I am most definitely focused on the equity, bringing fairness to everyone. I'm a diversity facilitator at my college where I conduct modules pertaining to diversity and inclusivity. And I think that this is something that that is just a natural for me in order to connect people and so that we can learn from each other. And I think that's the most important part. And that's the reason why I love open educational resources, because we are sharing and learning from one another.
I can go right after Tanja, because like Tanja, I'm a sociologist. And so as a social scientist, I think it's my personal and professional responsibility to ensure that all voices are heard and valued. So for me, it's of utmost importance that courses we teach or design are inclusive, so that the students can feel a personal connection to the academic content, not just to each other or to the faculty member, but to the content that they're learning. And when students feel a holistic sense of connection, they're much more likely to be successful. And then as a chair, I think it's my professional responsibility to make sure that my faculty have that greater academic freedom to incorporate course materials that they feel are going to be more equitable, more inclusive, so that they can discuss the contributions from marginalized populations.
I'll go next. So for me, this work is important both professionally and personally. I work with colleges and universities across the state. Many are Hispanic serving institutions or will soon be Hispanic serving institutions, and they're working to address systemic barriers to student success. And I really think that we can use open resources to move towards equitable academic outcomes. And personally, I'm a member of the Karuk tribe, which is a tribe from Northern California. And when I was a student, I almost never saw myself represented or my existence acknowledged in the course materials. However, I was fortunate enough to attend a tribal college for part of my education, and what a difference it made to be at an institution that recognized me as valuable from the moment I stepped onto campus. Thank you.
So those stories are amazing to me, partially because I know a lot of people have been thinking about equity, diversity, and inclusion for their whole careers. And for me, as a librarian, I've come at it more from a social justice of information perspective. But as I have engaged this work and I've engaged with the open education community, and over the past few years as EDI becomes more important in our institutions, I realize that there's not a lot of safe places where people can ask questions when they don't know things. So when CCCOER said we're interested in exploring EDI a little bit more, I wrote a blog post that basically said, this work is really hard and I don't have any answers. And I feel like I'm supposed to have answers because my job is to advise faculty and I don't know how. And it started this upswelling of people saying, me too. So that's why CCCOER worked harder to embrace this organizational shift towards talking more about EDI and how it impacts open work, and why we're interested in presentations like this one. We want to have supportive places to learn and discuss these issues, where nobody is supposed to have all the answers, where we're just supposed to listen and connect with each other and reflect on our own practices. And also, we want to be better as an organization at recognizing when EDI is affecting, when EDI should direct our work. And so that's part of what we're exploring here, is trying to guide and lead projects through EDI in open education. So that's kind of a bigger overall meaning to the consortium and why we're doing what we're doing. But it's also my why. My why is really trying to understand better and trying to listen better and trying to build spaces where we talk about these issues.
I'm going to start us out by defining some of these terms really quickly before we do the breakout rooms. So what do we mean when we say equity, diversity, and inclusion? I think it's really important to start with equity because many of us exist. I think it's really important to start with equity because I think many of us exist in environments that might be diverse but aren't necessarily equitable or inclusive. So we want to define equity as fairness, that it's the need to constantly and consistently redistribute power and opportunity in a way that recognizes this has not always been the case. I really like this quote by Dr. Jessica Williams from Every Learner Everywhere. Inviting people to the table reiterates the fact that you own the table, because it acknowledges that existing power and positionality needs to be recognized as a part of the discussion, both in and outside of the classroom.
Our next definition that we're going to cover is diversity. We know that another word that begins with a D pertaining to this is difference. Why are we so afraid to be different? Because we tend to fear what we don't know, especially adults. You know, as we're growing up, they always ask you to teach your children to learn how to swim as early as possible. And the reason they do that is because they don't have any fear. But as adults, we tend to fear what we don't know. And once we have the opportunity to learn about our differences, that is when the respect comes in. In today's society, it appears that everything we say or do is offending other people. We tend to feel like we're all PC. We can't say anything at all. But unfortunately, we can't learn in such a hostile environment. We must find a way to communicate this so we can learn from each other, and most important, learn to respect one another. And that's what diversity is really about, learning to respect the differences of one another.
So I'm just going to talk very briefly about inclusion. So in the previous slide, Tanja mentioned that inclusion is being asked to dance, and that really ties nicely to this because as Jesse Jackson had said, inclusion is not a matter of political correctness, it's the key to growth. And so for the purpose of, and you could talk about inclusion in multiple different ways in higher ed. You can talk about it from hiring and retention practices to faculty, staff, professional development to curriculum development. But for the purpose of this particular slide in my talk, we're just going to talk about it from a professional development standpoint, because Tanja's going to talk about inclusive curriculum later on. But when you begin or lead conversations on inclusivity at your institution, what you're really doing is transforming the traditional thought process for everyone involved, right? It entails a paradigm shift, if you will, in which the basic assumptions and like the common knowledge that we all kind of just grew up knowing are being examined, they're being challenged and being challenged to change. And this is a huge undertaking because frankly, it requires a lot of boldness and a lot of courage and a huge support system. And that's kind of why we're here before you, is because we want to help you with that as a support system, as a network, so that when you go back to your institutions and you continue this work of inclusivity, that you know you have us to rely on, and you can, of course, bounce off ideas with us and with one another.
All right. So it's important to state the benefits of equity, diversity, and inclusion rather than assuming everyone is on the same page. Equity, diversity, and inclusion represents the opportunity to provide increased talent, upward mobility, better solutions to world problems, and a stronger community. Is there anything else that the three of you wanted to add to this?
I can just add one more thing, especially regarding inclusion, but it certainly ties into the other variables of this formula. Having those conversations at your institution, things like workshops, seminars, it's so increasingly important to have support within your institution and administrator support, because that's where you can help get that stronger community. That's where you can get that networking that really matters. And I'm going to talk about this later on, but preaching to the choir is one thing, which is what we're all essentially here, we're the choir, but going out and talking about this to people who would otherwise kind of turn their backs on you, that's where the most important work really lies, is to be able to find champions to help you proceed with this work. And I guess that's me again. So we wanted to share with you this article. It's a lengthy article, so please feel free to read it later on by Savali Saheli Singh. I'll read it before the conference is over. But essentially why we're sharing this article with you is this. We want you all to recognize and realize that open means accessibility, as we all know, but that this work needs to be more than just about being open. It needs to be about being valued, being heard, being open-minded, and being participatory. And allowing others to participate with that open mind. What Sava Saheli Singh says is that being open tends to bias those who are already in privileged positions, such as race, class, and gender, as you see there in the statement. The people who typically call for open tends to be those in privilege, and while unintentionally, this may actually harm those groups who are not privileged. And so according to Singh, there are a number of different things that we can do to be more sensitive to those for whom open can mean inadvertently harm them. And in the article, Singh goes through a long list, which I won't do here, but it's very similar to what I had said earlier, where one of the things that we can do is interrogate platforms, be critical of the spaces we use and point them out to other people so that they are also aware of it and they can also be critical of it. It's almost like that phrase, an educated consumer of information, right? Finding and nurturing a community, we've said that before about how we build that community of people who can champion the work with you, but then also find people who might not necessarily jump on this right away. And that's really where the work lies ahead. And push back, defend all the groups by pushing back, by pushing away maybe even those groups where bias is strongly infused. And again, this goes back to how important it is to have that strong support system.
I will continue to speak on what Shinta just spoke about some ideas for change. One way that we can promote change, especially for our students in our classrooms, is that we can start as by something really small, by sharing our syllabus, changing the word in our syllabus, making sure that we include activities in our classes that include social and personal responsibilities. And normally when we talk about doing things in our classroom concerning social and personal responsibility, we only think of social and behavior sciences classes. But your math classes, your biology classes in reference to math, something could have been done in reference to a great class discussion on electoral votes with our past election. So we must include things like this in reference to our curriculum, and we must share that with one another. And when we're talking about change, we must realize that change is a process. This is not going to happen overnight. It is not an event that just happens. You walk in, get a ticket, and you see it, and it's over with. No, change is a process. So we must keep that in mind. We must remember, just like our country, OER was created by whiteness. And I don't mean that in a negative way, because I am so in love with one of the founders of this wonderful organization. But how we, excuse me, but how we're there to contribute to the world is different than if we own it. So we have to remember that everyone is different coming into the utilization of open educational resources. Everyone is coming in different in reference to the beliefs of equity, diversity, and inclusivity. And we have to meet people where they are. When I say meet people where they are, we have to understand exactly where they're coming from in order for us to help them continue to grow. I think that's so important. We just can't automatically just think that people are going to jump on the bandwagon just because EDI is now the buzzword. EDI has always been a buzzword. It's always been important in our society. Dr. King has been fought for equality for us all. So this is not anything new. It's just more to the forefront now more than ever. And I think that just because this year we have been impacted with the Me Too movement, with DACA, with Black Lives Matter, that we automatically think that everybody's supposed to be on the bandwagon. Again, everybody's coming from different places. So we have to accept where they come from, and we have to encourage them to continue to grow. And I hope that today, from the information that we're providing for you, that you will take this back with you to your institution, and again, encourage your institution to just take baby steps and continue to grow as well. Thank you.
So when we got together to talk about what we wanted to do with this presentation, we talked about doing some practical things like talking about, what we've done in our own work. But honestly, what our goal is to help rebuild classes around OER by asking and answering questions that provoke reflection, because we really think that that's where true change comes from, reflecting on what we do now and how we can be better. So we have some questions for you. We're going to break out for 25 minutes into breakout groups of about, as many people as we can get into breakout rooms and have comfortable conversations. So we're aiming for about 11 people. The prompts are going to come up again as you're in your session, so don't worry too much about writing things down. And we're going to ask a volunteer from each room to record 1 to 2 themes that come up in the middle of your discussion. And you'll put those in the chat window when you come back, so you don't even have to volunteer to talk unless you want to. Except in your breakout rooms. So as a reminder, the breakout rooms are not recorded, but pay attention to the conference code of conduct. So these are the prompts we're going to work with. And I won't read them to you. I'll just give you a moment to read them. And from here, you're going to go into your breakout rooms. We're going to do, I'm adjusting the time a little bit to honor the fact that we ran a little long. So we're going to go for 20 minutes in our breakout rooms. I apologize for shaving 5 minutes off your time. So we're going to go ahead and go into breakout rooms now for 20 minutes. Talk as much as you can in that time. Thank you.
If you didn't get to assign to a breakout room or you don't see your breakout room, just let me know and I'll reassign you.
Could you reassign me? Because I ended up in the same room with Shinta. And so
Sure, no problem.
thank you.
All right, I'm going to move you to room 10. There you go.
Thanks.
Anybody else need to be reassigned to a room? Do you see it, Ursula?
I do not. I do not see.
Let me try again. All right, how about now?
I do not see anything.
Odd.
Okay.
Did you find it?
No,
Take
I
a look.
didn't.
Take a look down below.
Breakout rooms. I see something. Okay.
Yep.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Room
You're
9.
welcome. Anybody else need to be reassigned or don't see your breakout rooms? Anybody else need to be reassigned to their breakout room? Hi, Carrie. Hey, Jack, you've been assigned to room 11. There you go. We're about to end the breakout rooms, so I don't know that I should assign you to one, Angie.
Oh, it's okay. Sorry, I'm doing multiple things today, and I really
I get
wanted to
it.
be here, so I thought I'd pop in just to at least get exposure to what you guys have been talking about. Maybe a copy if you have that PowerPoint or something like that.
Yeah, the presenters are all in the groups, and they will post a copy of the handouts and stuff. They'll be coming
Perfect.
out in about a minute.
No worries. Okay, I'll just stay tuned to hear the wrap up then. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We'll give people just another moment to come back. Thank you for managing our breakout rooms. That was awesome.
Everybody should be out now, Quill.
Okay, excellent. Welcome back, everybody. And thank you for your conversations. I'm going to ask that if you volunteered to be the person in your breakout room, or like mine forgot to do that, just share 3 of the major themes that you talked about with your group in the chat window so that we can kind of talk a little bit about those. And I think while we do this, it would be a good idea actually to spend some of this time answering questions from folks. So I'm going to kind of jump ahead on our presentation to make sure that we get all of our basic kind of the things we wanted you to have from us into the conversation. And then I think we should come back and talk about the themes from the rooms and also take questions, if that's okay with everybody else. Okay. So when we started this conversation, I told you we wanted to provoke questions, and we also want to build community because we believe that community is the best way to foster EDI work and to make sure that you have support when you want it and need it. So part of this presentation is about asking you to join our community and making some offers of what's available to you, because like, for example, in our breakout room, it seems like some people are on a little bit of a lonely path and other people are on an unknown path, and some people are like, how do I participate? What do I do? So we want to offer our community. So CCCOER is a very open kind of group of people. And so we have a lot of things we're doing around EDI right now. We're building a readings and resources collection that is just meant for people who want to get information, and I'll pop that into the chat window in just a moment. When we start to take questions. We have a community of practice, which is, it follows the very loose definition of communities of practice, where we take ideas from the community and then we have meetings and we talk to each other. And that's all we do. So that's your commitment, right? You can come if you want, you don't have to come. Some meetings you can't make, that's fine. So our next meeting is actually scheduled for January 28th of 2021. And I think we're going to talk about the EDI readings and resources list that we're building. So I would love to see you there. So if you'd like to be invited to that, my email address is coming up. And then we have a next steps committee, and I'm going to let Ursula talk a little bit about that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we have a next steps committee that we would love you to join us on. And we're really talking about proactively engaging with the community on equity, diversity, and inclusion. So this session is a result of that. But there's webinars. We've been providing input on the strategic plan for CCC OER. So this Next Steps Committee is definitely looking at how do we roll up our sleeves and create some change. So we don't have our next meeting scheduled yet, but it will probably be in that same time period. And the next slide we're going to have is our contact information. So if you're interested in either of these committees, we'd love you to contact us.
So, okay, I am going to ask my panelists, because I haven't been able to follow chat. I'm going to leave our email addresses up, so you can write them down or copy them down. And I'm going to ask if we can talk a little bit about either questions from the community or ideas that came from.
Well, since we're talking about building our OER community, I wanted to let everyone know that tomorrow at 9:30 Central Time, Dr. Smith and I will be presenting on building a local organization. I was a founder for Houston Area OER Consortium. And basically what we have done is we have 14 colleges in the Houston Galveston area where we meet monthly in order to discuss how we can continue to promote the use of open educational resources on our campus. We have basically taken each one of our goals from our colleges, and then we've combined them so we can make sure that everyone meet their goals for their college. But we are also networking with each other and spreading OER throughout Houston. We're currently working with the city of Houston as well as Harris County Educational. And so I think that this would be a wonderful, since Quill was talking about building a community, this would be a wonderful opportunity if you want to learn how to partner with your neighboring schools in order to make your community much larger so we can continue to spread the word.
Well, can I also chime in? And since we're talking about building a community here, I'm going to put in the chat World Access to Higher Education Day, also known as WAHED, which is the acronym. And it's happening on Tuesday. And this is an international movement, same time every year. And it helps us to increase our awareness of what's going on in terms of inequities all throughout higher education, all throughout the world, and then find ways to break down those barriers of equity, including open educational resources, but also other things. And so you would just click on that link, take a look at what WAHED is all about. And it's really just self-paced kind of work. You can be a part of the conference, but you can also just see what your institution can do to help in this global movement. So please take a look when you can.
I'm going to save the chat. So if we did not have an opportunity to answer your question, we will save the chat. And so we will be able to go back and hopefully be able to reach you and find your email address so we can most definitely be able to answer your questions that you have asked for us in our chat.
I know I saw one question in the chat. I haven't been following too closely, but I know there was a question about where can I find resources for my syllabus in terms of language. And so I would love to hear if you've got places you go to find language for your syllabus, and also how you, I'm asking the panel maybe, but how you ensure that even just putting that language in your syllabus means you're going to reflect on and enforce that language effectively in your teaching.
Quill, as a faculty member, how I utilize that in my syllabus is that I make sure that I teach at a Hispanic serving institution. I make sure that my activities is basically including them. My readings is including them as well. Also, I try to use as much neutral language as possible, so I'm never ever offending anyone at all. But I think that most important in reference to our syllabus as a faculty member, that we try to keep it very diverse, not just addressing just one audience. We have to address the audience that we see in front of us. And that doesn't mean just because I serve at a Hispanic serving institution does not mean that I'm including my my white students, my African-American students, my Asian students. No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that I have to include everyone. That's where inclusivity part comes from.
I'd also like to add, and this is tangential to the inclusive syllabus, but this is more about how we can create a more inclusive classroom. One of the things that my faculty at Montgomery College are doing, and they're the ones who are spearheading the WAHED event, and they also did another workshop on decolonizing higher education. One of the things that we really are going to be doing more intentionally this time around is including our students in the work, so that they are partners with us, so that they are also our champions in the work, rather than just being the recipients of the course materials that we teach them. And so students have given us ideas, a few ideas on how to effectively incorporate them as student ambassadors, which we really like that phrase. So we'll continue talking to them about the work at their upcoming events like the Student Senate. But I think by involving students in this work alongside us, that in and of itself is inclusivity.
In terms of the breakout rooms, does anybody have a particular theme you want to pull out and highlight? I know I'm asking you to scroll back through the chat. It's been pretty lively. And I've noticed throughout the presentation, Una has been adding lots of resources and inspiring people to share their resources. Those things are all making it on that resource list, which again, I will get posted. I should have put a link to it earlier.
I do want to introduce, well, I'm going to say introduce because I've never heard of this phrase before, but in our breakout session number 11, Betsy from CUNY, the librarian, she talked to us about digital redlining and considering more and more effective strategies to teach and have our students learn in this virtual environment. And as we all, because of the pandemic and just other things going on, more and more of our courses going into this environment, how important it is to consider things like emerging technologies, universal design, and other elements or tools needed to ensure that we create a more inclusive online or virtual setting for our students and our faculty too, through training and professional development.
Someone was asking in general, when we leave a meeting, how do we access the links, or do we need a copy? So the slide presentation will be posted, and many of the links will be in that slide presentation.
Yes, I'll go back through and make sure they're there. And then the other part is we're going to post a blog post at cccoer.org about this presentation. Una, I'm just volunteering that. But it will also link to these slides, and it will link to the resources we're talking about today. And it will partially be talking about the community of practice and how it's growing and what we're hoping to do there. The other thing is on that list that I just posted, we're collecting resources. So if you're a person who is like, hey, something's missing, which probably it is because I was formatting until really late last night, please feel free to nominate things that should be on that list and we will add them. That's part of the Google form that's there. See, I'm already getting things through here. Okay, so I do want to open it up to if anybody wants to ask questions out loud, please do.
Just as a note, we're at time. But you guys are welcome to hang around for about 15 minutes after.
Thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you, and sorry I joined late, but I did appreciate it, and I'm so glad that your slides and all the notes and links will be available. I got a lot of, I did like 3 things that were recorded last night after my kid went to bed, so it's been really helpful to be able to do that, even though I'm not able to participate as much as I want during the day.